Put your hands together for the co-executive director.
Oh, this is unnecessary.
Of Run for Something, Ross Morales Rocketto.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, can y'all hear me? There we go. All right, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Now just clap again. Thanks, y'all. My name is Ross. I am one of the co-founders and co-EDs of Run for Something. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. This is honestly probably the first time we've done an in-person event in a couple of years, so we're very excited to see people in person. This is going to be a very fun program, and we're really excited to be here. So I want to start by just saying thank you to our candidates, alum, to all of our volunteers, to donors, to staff. We wouldn't have gotten to 5 years if it wasn't for basically everyone in this room who's helped support us along the way. So give yourselves a round of applause. All right. I also want to thank some of our sponsors. We got Act Blue, we got Lim Consulting, Precision Strategies, Emily's List, and Catalyst. We have applause. We have a very fun program. I'm going to hold up this. Everyone should have one of these on your seat. It's actually, we had some last minute changes, so scan the QR code so you can see what's coming up. It's all going to be very fun. It also has the union bug. We have a couple of really awesome people here to speak. We have a few senators who are going to be speaking, but honestly, the thing that I'm the most excited about is, a lot of us live in DC. We don't actually get to talk to the folks who are out there making a difference in their local communities every day. So I'm really, really excited that we have some of our candidates and alumni here today for a couple of panels. It's going to be really fun. And then, we have a lot of program to get to today. So drinks are over here at the bar. There's food. You should just get up. There's a bathroom somewhere back here. You should just get up as you need to, get a drink. It's going to be great. And then, when we first got started back in 2016, truly and legitimately, I think some of you might have heard this before, we thought this was going to be a side hustle. We thought if we were really lucky, maybe 100 candidates would tell us they were interested in 2017. And as of today, we have over 100,000 people who told us that they're interested in running for office all around the country. We've made almost 2,000 endorsements, and we've helped elect about 637 folks. So it's really, it's really awesome to be here celebrating 5 years. I'm really excited to be here with all of you, and I'm really excited to watch the program. And with that, I would like to introduce my lovely co-founder, Amanda Litman.
Yeah, Pony is my walk-up music. It's also my first dance at my wedding. I'm Amanda Litman. I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive directors of Run for Something. I'm so glad to have everyone here. As Ross said, we have amazing panels. You have a chance to ask questions. You can tweet them if you want. We can also do a little hand raising after we get to a couple questions that I have for our amazing panelists. We're not going to screen them, so be polite. With that, I am so excited for our first conversation is with 3 amazing Run for Something alum who are currently running for higher office because we have built the bench. It has been working. So I am so excited to welcome Pennsylvania Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, candidate for United States Senate. We have Rhode Island State Senator Cynthia Mendes, who is candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island. Very good. Yeah, this music rules. And we have Memphis City Councilman JB Smiley Jr., who is currently running for governor. Okay, so a couple questions for all y'all. And we'll sort of jump bounce these around a little bit. Today we are celebrating Run for Something's 5-year anniversary. So I want to know 5 years ago, give or take a little bit, and we'll start with you, JB. Where were you? What were you doing?
I think I was in Little Rock, Arkansas. So previously I had an opportunity to work in the Rose Law Firm, the same law firm that Hillary Clinton worked in. And then I went across the street to work in Montgomery. I remember the night of the election, we were all gathered in, assuming that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And then one of our partners in the law firm just started crying. I was like, what's going on? And then we just saw bad things on TV. And it was heartbreaking for us. And I remember the next day at the law firm, our firm was extremely conservative. So you had about 25 lawyers, about 5 of us were Democrat. 4 of the Democrats didn't come in. I came in and looked. I said, well, it's not gonna be. This is not going to be friendly for me today. I think I'm gonna take the rest of the day off. And I just reached out to some of the other members in our firm and just started talking about politics and then, what we can do differently. And here I am.
So 5 years ago, I never would have imagined I would be here right now. 5 years ago, I was angry. I was mobilized and I was very busy. I was a single mom. I was working 2 jobs. I worked in healthcare. I needed a second job. I was actively working and helping unhoused folks. So I was working in a soup kitchen. And when I wasn't doing that, I was actively mobilizing for protests and organizing. And that energy resulted in the grassroots movement that is swelling in Rhode Island right now, demanding change. And so as we were able to funnel that anger into actual activism and getting a lot of people to run for office.
Yeah, so five years ago was that was a tough year, and it was also the year I decided to run for office. But I guess around this time, my mom had just had the stroke that ultimately took her life, and so we're doing a lot with that. I was also on the board of, I was the co-chair at the time of Liberty City LGBTQ, our political action committee. I was on the board for the National Organization for Women in Philadelphia, and so we were really involved in stuff. And so that was a busy time, being frustrated about things happening in my personal life, frustrated, that this clown got into the White House. Frustrated about the state of the world, and then starting to get some of those nudges from people at this time where everything was going on. And what if you ran for office? I was like, I don't know, because as somebody who's involved in the political action side, you get to meet a lot of candidates. And they come and they want your endorsement. And some of these people are real assholes. And so I was like, do I want to work with these folks all the time? I was like, I don't know about that. But by the end of the year, I had made the big decision to run for something, and really grateful that you guys were a part of it.
Malcolm, you got at this a little bit, but I'd love to hear from Cynthia and JB. What made you decide to run?
So my now running mate, because I'm running for lieutenant governor alongside my dear friend, Matt Brown, he was a former Secretary of State and a mutual friend of ours, someone that I had worked with for a number of years in the unhoused community. We had a mutual friend and he asked us to go for coffee together. So I had no idea what the former Secretary of State had in the world. I had no idea what he had to talk to me about. And we sat there, we had coffee, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to ask me to volunteer or donate or work for him or something. And we're talking, and he said, okay, I really think that you need to run for office. And then I promptly laughed in his face because it was beyond wild to me. But what we learned in that conversation and what we've learned through the past 5 years is that the people that are doing the work in the community, the people that are doing the heavy lifting to make sure that no one falls through the gaps, especially when we have leaders, as we did 5 years ago, of someone that was just creating gaps for people, that we have to realize that the people that were picking up the pieces are the people that belong in seats of decision making. And that's why I knew I had to say yes. And I also knew that when I was working in the healthcare field and I saw people turn down their treatment plan because they couldn't afford it. When I heard my teenage daughter and her friends talk about, they didn't know if they wanted to have children because of the climate change and the climate crisis that was happening, I had no choice but to say yes, even though it seemed radical and impossible. And radical and impossible is exactly what we need. And that's what we did.
So my story is a little bit different. So I relocated back home. So I moved back to Memphis, I think early 2017, and I joined an organization called the Shelby County Young Democrats. So I was surrounded by nothing but millennials. And so the millennials like, JB, it's time to run. I said, y'all lost your mind. It's not gonna happen. So young people, they were pushing me to run for office. They said, you're perfectly positioned to run. You actually care about the community, but also not young people, what I would call the seniors of the village. So one of the gentlemen, Mr. Doris, is here. Mr. Doris, wave your hand, let the people see. All right. So I was telling the story earlier. So Mr. Doris came into my office. You know, I'm a solo practitioner at this point, and I thought he was coming to be a client. So we talk about this legal issue. And then at the end of the conversation, he asked me some political question, and I was fired up just talking about it. And he gets up and didn't pay me my consulting fee at all. And he said, I'm going to work with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I called you in a couple of weeks, and he called me and said, I think it's time for you to run for office. I said, okay, you lost your mind too. And then, you know, the third thing, one of the young ladies that, you know, I listen to a lot is a colleague of mine, also former president of Shelby County Young Democrats. She said, well, there's someone who's thinking about running for office. You know, at this time, extremely idealistic. I think everyone who seeks office want to do something good for the community. So what she did, she said, well, go out to lunch with him and figure out what he's about. So I go to lunch with him and I asked him, so why are you running? And the only thing that he told me was, I think I could win. Now, me being idealistic at this point, I thought he was going to tell me something about improving the community because we lived in a poor zip code in the state of Tennessee. I thought he was going to talk about raising the floor for marginalized communities. It had nothing to do with people, had everything to do with self-interest. And I walked out, you know, out of the meeting feeling, you know, mad and angry because my family lives in their community. My family lives in a food desert. My family needs help. The people who grew up with me need help. And you're seeking office and not talking about how you can help them, serve them. I said, you know what? I sent them a text. I said, you earned yourself an opponent. So me being mad.
I love how each of those stories are wildly different. And the outcomes were ultimately all the same. I'd love to hear, as a moderator's privilege, how did run for something help you? Malcolm?
You know what, when I decided to run, you know, frankly, and maybe this is different. There were a bunch of moments where you make that decision, right? And then you kind of backtrack on the decision, and then you make the decision again. For me, that decision was made at my now husband's his pool at his apartment. He lived in California, and it was like not that nice of a pool, okay, guys, but. He lived in an apartment building. It was like an icky pool that you don't really want to go in. But we're sitting there, and I remember going through the whole list of reasons why I could never win and I would never get support. We had only elected one LGBTQ person in Pennsylvania, and you know, Brian's fantastic, but Brian represented the neighborhood, so there was a base of people there who certainly didn't see that as a negative. I remember just going through all the list of reasons why I was disqualified, and I can tell you, in my time being in office, that I found out that everything I thought disqualified me actually really qualified me for this job in ways that I had not imagined. And what Run for Something really did was give me that first boost of confidence once you jump off the cliff of running for office, because now you're doing it, right? You said it publicly. I quit my job. And I remember that letter where I'm quitting and I'm like reading it and I'm rereading it. And I never looked at a letter this long before because I had to quit, man. I had to leave. And when I got that first endorsement, I think that it instantly made other people take my campaign more seriously, that somebody, and they didn't know who Run for Something was, but they were like, well, some group is willing to say Malcolm should do it. And then to use your line, there's some other elders in the village, I love that, I'm taking that, who said, oh, I'm seeing you're picking up support, and support sort of, tends to follow. And so I would say the one thing Run for Something did was to give me a sense of confidence, but also a sense of credibility in walking into the race.
Very similar. But one thing that was unique about my race, well, there are two things. I was not alone. So I was running with a slate of candidates in Rhode Island with the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, one of the co-chairs and founders here, Jennifer O'Rourke. And we were going up against a lot of power. And there were a lot of primaries, a lot of challengers that people were not incredibly happy about. So my race in particular, I was running against the chair of the finance committee, who was slated to be the next Senate president. He outspent us 4-1. He had a massive kind of political powerhouse, just community. And it seemed impossible. And because I wasn't running alone, there were a whole bunch of us working class, everyday people that decided to run for office. And to enter that space, and be taken seriously is very difficult in the beginning, especially because this was the first time running. And so, I mean, these teachers, nurses, we've been activists, we've been on the outside, never on the inside. And so the co-op gave us community and gave us togetherness and gave us the materials we needed to run. But then you need a validator on the outside. You need somebody to say, yes, these people, we trust them to do this job. We know that they can do it. And so to have a national organization to come in and say, we see you, it not only gave us that boost, that confidence, but it also gave us the validation. And it gave us this additional branding that we had as a community, which was incredible. And so we absolutely love that. It was our first endorsement, and it made some of the kind of entrenched folks that weren't taking us seriously all of a sudden start to take us seriously. They took us a little bit more seriously when we stole 10 of their seats too.
So I think my first time learning about Run for Something, I was living in Memphis, but I had a friend of mine who was running to be the very first Black elected mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas, Frank Scott. And at the point in time, I was serving as the vice chairman of the Black Caucus of the Young Democrats of America. I said, well, wouldn't it be great if I can get about 20 of you all to meet me in Little Rock and we can canvass for Frank Scott? So we go canvass for Frank Scott, and I come back to Frank Scott's headquarters, and there was a group of Run for Something in there talking about politics, talking about how they can win the seat. And I introduced myself. I said, hi, I'm JB Smiley. They said, JB, you're organizing for Frank, aren't you? I said, well, I'm trying to do something. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm trying to do something. We're knocking on many doors as possible. And they told me, well, if you ever decide to run for office, shoot us an email. Sure enough, several months later, I reach out. I think the regional director at the time was Tariq Smith. Reach out to Tariq, and he said, JB, go to the website, apply for an endorsement. We're coming to Memphis. I said, you're not coming to Memphis. He shows up to Memphis, and he said, I want to eat some barbecue while I'm there, but we're going to knock on some doors. And when I think about the endorsement, what it meant to us, because when you're running for office in particular communities, I talked about the seniors of the village. I talk about young people supporting us, but you need an organization to give you that stamp of approval. Although I wasn't ready yet because I didn't know when they're going to announce the endorsements. I looked on the website, online in about, I think, February. And they should know, JB Smiley Jr. is running for Memphis City Council Super District 8. I said, well, I'm not ready yet, but hi, I'm running for office. But seriously, it gave me the stamp of approval and also gave me that extra kick because you need someone to say that you're capable, that you're ready. Because sometimes you have self-doubt, but Run for Something said, you're ready. And sure enough, we were ready and we were successful. We unseated an incumbent. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to open it up if anyone has any questions. We're getting short on time, but if you've got any questions for them, want to raise your hand? Otherwise, I've got one. Yeah. So you all are running for statewide office. I'm just curious, what's been the biggest difference in the campaign and what's the biggest challenge?
I think I will start. So I live in a minority majority community. So predominantly of Memphis is about 65% Black, and the state of Tennessee is not that. It's about 17%. So for me, I think the biggest difference is, how I articulate a message. So when I was running for city council, I would go into the wealthier communities and I would introduce myself as Attorney JB Smiley. They appreciate the credentials. But when I go into some of the less affluent communities and I would introduce myself as Attorney JB Smiley, they would say, hold up, you're pretentious, you're stuck up, you're not really one of us. I said, no, I really grew up around the corner from you. But seriously, so what I tried to do in that race and what's been transferring well in my run for governor, I would introduce myself as an attorney JB Smiley. I go in the community and I would say, hey, I'm JB Smiley Jr. I'm running to be a member of the Memphis City Council. And shortly thereafter, they would say, well, what do you do for a living? Well, I wake up every single day and solve problems for people. And the quick next question comes, what do you do for a living? I'm a lawyer. I practice law by trade. And they immediately receive me differently. And it's based on how I articulated what I do for a living. And the same thing I do across the state of Tennessee. Whether I'm in the Black and brown communities, whether I'm in urban communities, whether I'm in rural roads less traveled, the way that I articulate what the message is, how I define who I am and what I will seek to do for the state of Tennessee makes the world of difference. And people understand we have potholes, we have issues with trans bathroom bills. People understand that the dollars aren't being allocated effectively or evenly across the state. People understand it, but it's how you articulate that message. So for me, it's all about how I articulate the message I'm trying to convey to the people.
The big difference for me is the barriers that are in place. The first time, didn't take us seriously, didn't think we were gonna win, and we won massively. This time around, now it's a little bit of a threat to power. And what we've realized is that we don't have the advantage of, of a surprise. They know that the grassroots is growing and swelling and ready for change. And so before first race, you can kind of run a scrappy group and get everybody ready to run, massive win. This time, the resistance is stronger because what's been apparently clear is that first win galvanized and energized people and made it really, really clear that people are very, very ready for change. On the other side, there are some people that feel the audacity for change this quickly. Who do you think you are? And now the doubling down on that resistance. And so running for statewide and not running statewide alone, energizing other people. Now you need to run, now you need to run now, and energizing other people. That upswelling is amazing and beautiful, but now also there's an upswelling of resistance because running for statewide means there's more power and you're gonna energize the bench, right? What we're here for, what we've been doing, that bench is gonna grow and that scares some people. And those are the people that are standing in the way of change. And so those are some of the really stark differences.
Very powerful. I would say, it's disrupting what I think one of the greatest lies told by Republicans, and it's not just the big lie that we all know, but there's a bigger and more consistent lie that what's happening in our urban centers is so disconnected from what's happening in our rural communities. It's so disconnected from what's happening in our suburban communities. Just, oh my God, Malcolm, how could you ever? And what are you gonna say when you get to this town? I'm like, I'm gonna say what the hell I was saying in my neighborhood. And what I find consistently is that I get to rural communities where folks ain't never heard of nobody named Malcolm Kenyatta. And if I close my eyes and just listen, the questions are the same that folks are asking at 16th and Susquehanna. How am I gonna make what I call it accessible to my family? This idea I can have one good job backed up by a union. If I'm gonna start a small business, there's an environment for that. My kids are gonna go to a good school. That if I get sick, I can go to the doctor and then fill the prescription after the appointment. And you know what? Then I can retire with a level of dignity in that house I was able to afford in the first darn place, in a community that's safe, that has clean air, that has clean water. That's what every community wants. And we have been tricked into not talking to each other. Because if they can convince us to not talk to each other, then you can fill that void with the scariest version of who we are and of what we're fighting for. But I would say the other big difference is run for something doesn't endorse when you're running for this now. So that's a little bit different.
Uninterested in Congress. Any other questions? We have a couple more minutes. Yeah, in the back.
Running for office has a big impact, obviously, on our families in front of this. What advice do you have for people running?
So I just got married, And so I'm gonna jump in on the deep end because we're still in the honeymoon phase. So anything I say wrong, right? You'll forgive me right now. I think the main thing is trying to separate the work from your actual life. And those two things certainly intersect, but we've tried to work very hard to say, like, you know, Friday night after a certain time, like it is just us and like we are doing our thing, you know, come hell or high water, we're going to have this time. And so I think creating sacred space where the campaign can exist in this space was important. And I remember us almost like not doing our wedding, but we said, you know what, this is on the anniversary of our first day. There's a lot going on. This is important. The you know, who controls the US Senate is pretty important. And Malcolm, you need to win this race. But also, when I'm not invited to any more panels, when I don't want to do any more panels, and I'm not doing any more interviews, he's still going to be there. And so I need to treat him and our relationship with that understanding every single day.
I'm a single mom and my daughter's a teenager, and she has been in on the decision from day one, the first race and this race. So we talked about the stakes, we talked about what it would take, and it was a family decision. So we decided to run. And one of the things, in addition to creating time, was also giving her permission to slip to kind of say, time out, I need you right now. And then she could do that, which was really, really important. Setting expectations about that, about what's going to be different, how busy I will be, but you can always say time out. We have these particular times carved out, but you can call me in. And also knowing that permission slips comes with a lot of authority. So she has taken the role of both sidekick and heckler, and takes them both very seriously. So keeps me humble and keeps me caffeinated. And I love her for it. Yeah, so I would say setting expectations, setting time, and then that authority to be who she wants to be in that space, and making that decision together was really important for our family.
Don't do what I did, which was just run. Don't do that. Okay, so for me, I wanted to make sure after I just said I'm going to run for office without talking to anybody in my family, I want to make sure they were fully informed, because I didn't know anybody who was seeking public office. I didn't grow up in a family who actually cared anything about politics. The very first person who knew anything about politics had experience running race. He's here with me today. And what we did, once I decided that this was something I was going to do, I had brought them into a room with my mentor, and it gave us a rundown on what to expect. And once you hear what to expect, you have some reservations. Your family will have some reservations. Potentially, because politics gets really nasty in Tennessee. If I seek a certain office, it could potentially make them lose money. It could potentially cause them to lose their job. You have to have a realistic expectation of what running for office not only means for you, but the people you love and care about, because that's what's really important. The folks you love, issues you're fighting for, and you won't get that really realistic expectation unless you talk to someone who's ran for office before or who played a vital role in seeking political office. So for me, making sure that people you love have a realistic expectation of what running for office looks like.
I have a question for each of you. A lot of folks in this room help people run for office. They give advice, they consult, they support candidates. I want to hear, what's the worst advice you've ever gotten? You don't have to name names when you can, but.
The worst advice I ever got was don't run, and don't be you as you run. I get people all the time who say, well, Malcolm, oh my God, you're the first Black senator from Pennsylvania, you'll be the first gay man ever serve in the US Senate. And like, what does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not running for those things. I just am those things. And by virtue of me winning, yeah, that will happen. But I remember my launch video. And in my launch video, I just mentioned, that I was like a poor Black gay kid from North Philly. It really was an aside. Like, the video was not about that at all. I didn't even hear it because I've been Black every day of my life, big shocker. And so I wasn't even thinking about it. And I had somebody who was a supporter of mine who said to me, oh, so this is a very good edit of the video, but like, you're going to take out like all the stuff about you being gay. And I was like, wait, what's all the stuff? Well, you have a line where you like mention that you're going to certainly take that out. I was like, no. And they said, well, you're going to lose. I don't know if you should do this because you're not ready to do what it takes to run. And in their mind, that meant going back in the closet. And there's nothing in the closet but mothballs, so get out of there. And that was crappy advice. I did not take it. And thank God I did not, because that was really silly advice. And now in retrospect, that person was like, well, thank God you didn't listen to me. And I'm like, thank God I didn't.
Women tend to find, oh, people give them a lot of bad advice. Not running is one of them, or running, start somewhere. How dare you start at Senate? Shouldn't you start at school committee or city council? Like the audacity.
Important offices. You should.
Those
run
are
for
very
too.
important offices. Run for those, but run for what you want to run for. And so the bad advice, the first piece of bad advice that I got was ask permission, go talk to other politicians that were in office. And fortunately, I had very good mentors that told me, do not do that. The people that you want to talk to are the people that are doing the work. And that is who I spent time talking to. And now that I'm in office, I spend time talking to those people, the people in the community, the people that are doing the work, the faith leaders, the organizers, all the people that are picking up the people that everybody has left out. So that was a really, really bad piece of advice, was to talk to politicians and get permission. We're not here to get permission. We're here to get some work done.
For some reason, I get a lot of crappy advice. I blame Amber. So Amber Sherman is the president of Shelby County Young Democrats. I just want to shout her out real quick. But she's doing the work. She's organizing in Memphis. So it allows people like me to get in office, because when she works, more progressives get elected. So I want to quickly shout her out. So the worst advice I've received, right? She's a lot. I'm going to start with this one. Wait your turn. I think every young person who's considered running for office, you don't necessarily have to be young, but attempting to do something different, attempting to push against the status quo, they say, wait. I'm gonna briefly tell you the story. So there's a young lady who's running for a district attorney in Shelby County. She's 65 years old. And every time she thought about running for office, they told her to wait. And then she waited. 8 more years passed. They told her to wait again. It's not your turn. Wait. And now she's 65. And the truth, if I can be very honest with you, it's probably past time, because there's candidates who speak differently, speak directly to the issues. So my message for anyone who's considering a run for office today, don't wait your turn. Your turn is now. Yes. You make change happen now. When I was deciding to run for city council, everywhere I went, wait your turn. Every door I knocked on, every politician I called, they said, well, it's not your turn. You didn't call so-and-so. And I said, well, so-and-so is not speaking to the issues that, concern me. So-and-so is not actually in the community with the people, not at the soup kitchens, not at the county commission meetings, not in the community speaking to people. There was a study when I was running for office that talked about, my district, that said the people who live in my community have a life expectancy of 13 years fewer than their white counterparts. But no one was talking about it. The people who were serving my community was not talking about it. And they were telling me to wait my turn. Absolutely not. My turn is now, because my district is in need of help right now. My district is in need of an advocate right now. So that was the worst advice I received. And the second thing that I heard often was, be anything other than my authentic self. I'm a straight shooter. I don't really carry a script. I'm going to tell you what comes from my heart, and I'm going to speak from a place of passion and place of experience. So be yourself. Don't wait your turn, because guess what? Your turn is right now.
Last question. In like one tweet or less worth of words, how can people here help you?
The 3 things every campaign needs: time, talent, treasure, and treasure is money. So malcolmkenyatta.com, okay?
Definitely money, especially when you're going up against big money. We are really, really reliant on progressives who know that what the stakes are, and out of state, in different states, to invest, because change in one state means change in another. There's a ripple effect across this country, and we know that that's what it's going to take. So donations, massive, massive help.
Everything Malcolm said, everything she said. So what I tell people when I'm on a campaign trail, I said, tell a friend to tell 10 that we're going to vote JB Smiley in, but also go to votejbsmiley.com, tell somebody about what we're doing. I think we're going to make change, but change doesn't happen if you don't invest your time and sweat equity and also your resources in our campaign. Thank you.
In November, when they all win, you're gonna be able to say you saw them today.
Thank you, Josh.
I know a lot of folks here have worked with members of Congress or governors or lieutenant governors who have been disappointing. None of those three will be those people when they win. And that is one of the coolest parts about doing this work, is getting to see folks like them from day one, from being the first endorsement on their first campaign, to rise up and to hopefully win and then make a difference in even bigger scale. And while we will not endorse on your race, we are so proud to see you guys thrive. I think our next speaker is here. No? I don't know what that color means. 2 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, when we take a quick pause, if folks want to get a drink or take a seat, then we can, when our next speaker arrives, we can get started. Thank you. If you are still getting a drink or getting some food, take your time. Make your way to a seat. We are so thrilled. I was shit talking Congress a little bit earlier, but we are lucky to have some amazing members of Congress, including one of the best champions of Run for Something, one of the United States senators who was the earliest, I think, national supporter of us. He jumped on one of our first calls to talk to people thinking about running, just surprise people. And has been a very fierce champion of our work, helping us raise just a bunch of money, reach a bunch of people thinking about running, along with the amazing work he's been doing in the United States Senate as his day job. So we are so glad to have, for a very short spiel, because he's got to get back to work, United States Senator Brian Schatz.
I've never had like a walk-on song like that. That felt pretty good. Thank you for having me. Aloha, everybody. It is great to see so many people. I walked in with my communications director, Mike, and we were very impressed with the size of this crowd, with the youth of this crowd, with the crowdedness of this room. We're really, really thrilled. Look, when I decided to run for office now 25 years ago for the first time, I was 25 years old. And I actually went to a hearing at the legislature. I was running a nonprofit environmental organization. I went to a hearing at the legislature, and it was to ban a certain kind of hydrofluorocarbon because Dow Chemical had figured out a way to circumvent the local law at the time. And I went there, and the chair of the committee was pretty bad on those issues, but there was a certain member of the committee who fell asleep during the hearing, and I was, pretty fired up about this. And so I went to my dad Sunday night dinner, and he said, well, why don't you run for office? And I said, because I'm 25 years old. You don't run for office when you're 25 years old. And he said, Calvin Say was elected to the State House of Representatives in Hawaii when he was 19 years old, and he was a busboy at the Flamingo Chuck Wagon. It's a part-time legislature. His part-time job was he was a busboy. He was 19 years old. And Gary Gill and Scott Psyche and the departed, may he rest in peace, Mark Takai, all elected at 25, 26, 27 years old. And so what I did was I sat down with a person named Russell Blair, who used to represent the district that I ran in. And he said two things. He said, shoe leather. And if you're not wearing out your shoes, you're going to lose. And then he said, don't be afraid of losing. Be afraid of doing what it'll take to win. And I did wear out 3 pairs of Rockports. To the point where, like, as we say in Hawaii, puka shoes, so holes all the way through. And I knocked on everybody's door in the district 4 times, to the point where at the end, winning and losing felt very similar because people were not interested in talking to me. they had decided, but it wasn't clear which way they had decided. I won by 425 votes because lots and lots and lots of people came to my aid and came to our community's aid. And so I didn't have run for something, but I had like a dozen people who really, really believed in me. And I didn't have a way to raise money. I had, well, I'm not going to age myself with the technology that I use, but let's just say my stuff wasn't very fancy. And I remember, nowadays when you walk house to house, they give you what they call a zigzag list, which allows you to, if you're walking from the top of a hill to the bottom of a hill, you zigzag. Well, I hadn't figured that out. So I would just like walk up the hill and then I'd try to go down the hill. And it was sort of impressive to people because they're like, that guy's working hard. And then after I did that, I think the second round, I thought, there's got to be a smarter way for me to do this. Could I just get dropped off at the top? So everything I was figuring out as I went along, what kind of aloha shirt to wear, what kind of lei to wear. You can't wear a fresh flower lei every day. That's going to cost you $18 a day. And I got better and better at it. I got more and more comfortable on my own feet and in my own skin as a public servant. And those were formative days for me in terms of the way I view public service. And so when I heard about Run for Something, I think I called you guys and said, how can I help? And then I got on Twitter and did whatever I could do. But I just want you to know how important I think this is. And, the difficulty right now, I think with the internet and with all of the challenges that society faces, the planet faces, our communities face, it's actually difficult to figure out where to start, right? What should I be doing, right? And it's that old, I'm going to paraphrase it, that old Arthur Ashe saying, where should I start? You start where you are. What should you use? You use whatever you have. And what should you do? You do what you can. And for a lot of you and for this organization, it is all about starting where you are, using what you have and doing what you can. And understanding that school board races and certainly anyone in the business of counting votes in a way that makes democracy valid and proud, or the legislature or county council or mayor or United States Senate or whatever it may be, we're all going to change the world, but all of us have to do it together. So anything I can do to be helpful, I will do. I'm sorry, I got to go back to do Ukraine things. You understand? But I just want you to know I've got your back. Any way I can be helpful, I will try to be helpful. And thanks so much for being involved in one of the most important political organizations in the United States. Thanks very much.
Is there somebody else after this?
Awesome.
That was a good song too. Let me make sure we're ready. Like any good late pandemic event, it involves a Zoom. We are so glad to have a couple other United States senators be able to join us. Unfortunately, they were not able to leave the Hill like Senator Schatz, so they'll be Zooming in from the screen. We are very appreciative to have Senator Chris Murphy from the great state of Connecticut joining us for tonight's conversation. You can give him a round of applause. He can't hear you though.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Hi, Senator Murphy.
All right. Hey guys, how are you?
Great.
Well, as you mentioned, am not able to be there with you in person. We are right now about to get a pretty important classified briefing on what's happening in Ukraine. I think Senator Schatz just mentioned he's returning here to be part of this, but I just can't tell you how appreciative I am of everything that you have done over the past 5 years. It takes such guts to run for office today. There are so many reasons not to put your foot into the arena, whether it be the amount of time that it takes to raise money, the fact that you're subjecting yourself and your family and your friends to inspection and criticism. And so the helping hand that you provide people who are thinking about making that jump is often the difference maker. And I remember those early days of being a candidate. I don't come from a family with any political background. I ran for office when I was 24 years old with a couple good ideas, a fire in my belly, but very little else. And I think of how many other people, my age especially, who were thinking about trying to make a difference in their 20s, didn't do it because of all of the pressures that are upon you to just wait your turn. Run for something gives that practical help to individuals who are thinking of making the jump, but you also just provide a little bit of a moral boost to folks who know that running for office is the right thing, but need somebody to sort of light a fire underneath them. Listen, this is the most perilous moment our democracy has ever faced. We're watching a country on the other side of the world be attacked from outside, but our country is being attacked from inside. We have a lot of enemies of democracy inside the United States today, and they are unfortunately running into a lot of Americans who are willing to listen because democracy hasn't been delivering for the American people for a very long time. We have had the sort of big middle of America essentially stuck. Democracy isn't providing prosperity in the way that it did 40 or 50 years ago. And so all of a sudden, people who are advertising America to move to something other than democracy are finding too many willing ears. So this is a moment for all of us to step up and join the fight. And what you have done to help people understand how to become candidates, to inspire them to make that fight, it just is, it's what this country needs right now. And so I'm excited to be just a small backer of your efforts. I'm glad to join with Brian and Cory tonight and celebrate your achievements over the last 5 years and to really command you to do even more over the next 5. We just have to remember that this government that we live in is still an experiment, right? It's not a coincidence that 0.0001% of all human beings have lived under a democracy, because it's deeply unnatural. It's antithetical to our nature as human beings. We're drawn to hierarchical systems. We're drawn to strong leaders, but the United States of America has decided to put us all in charge. Right now, that experiment is under duress, and this is the moment for more people to step into the breach. You're helping them do that. So thank you so much to everything that you've done already. Thanks for everything you will do to continue to populate our ranks at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. And I'm really excited to be here with Brian and Cory, two of my best friends in the Senate, to congratulate you and wish you good luck in the coming months and years. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me be a part of this today.
Thank you, Senator Murphy.
Hello, everybody. I heard applause for Senator Murphy. Oh, now am I on? I think I'm on.
Hi, Senator Booker.
Hello. Look, my staff and I were getting so hyped up about this little quick chat with you all. It's more than that for me. It is a moment for me to celebrate. I've seen the arc of this organization just grow and grow and grow. The people you've impacted by literally the thousands and thousands, and you can't even measure the change that makes. As a guy who in 1998, it wasn't even the 2000s yet, ran for my first office, as opposed to complaining about a corrupt regime or complaining about all the problems in the city I was living in. I had great mentors that said, shut up and run. And that began my political career, but it really was a career that was all made possible by people who believed in me and prepared me and empowered me and saw things in me I didn't see in myself. And so in many ways, I see what you all are doing as continuing the blessings that were given to me as an individual candidate in my younger years, where I became the youngest person ever elected in my city's history. I see you all now as, in many ways, forgive the word, but institutionalizing these kind of efforts and empowering folks to come forward and run. And not just young people, but dear God, like you guys are bringing such rich diversity. The people who won offices through you are, 1 out of 5 of them is LGBTQ. In fact, more than that. The majority have been women. The majority have been people of color. It's incredible pipeline of the best of who we are as a nation. And so I'm hyped to be here just because I just know this is the beginning. We're 5 years in, thousands of people touched, hundreds and hundreds of victorious people in office who are going to continue like I did. I was a city council person, then a mayor, then a United States senator. I know there's going to be literally hundreds and hundreds of those stories of people who emerged through leadership because they got the support, the instruction, the empowerment of this incredible organization. So I just want to come to give you guys love. And just one last little just point. We are in a crisis, but every generation of Americans is in a crisis because democracy is never done. It must be worked for. And I think in many ways we've taken things for granted and our democracy has not been tilled. The soil of our soul as a country has not been tilled, has not been worked. We've not been planting the right kind of seeds. We've been letting it get overgrown by weeds that are seeking to choke out the bounty, the best of who we are. And so I just hope that you all are a part, I know you all are a part of something that's really going to help revitalize our democracy with new streams of nurturing energy that's going to help us to grow the kind of bounty we need to in the future. And in that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And call on me in any way that I can help. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me to continue helping you in these next 5 years.
Thank you, Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. All the best, everybody.
Amazing. We have one more panel, and then we will move to another room for more drinks and food and mingling that is less constrained by chairs. But I'm really excited for this particular conversation because it is with 3 amazing women who have run for office and won and are making a difference in their communities right now. So we're going to talk for a couple minutes. We'll again have a chance to ask any questions. As always, if you are standing and want to sit, there are chairs. If you are sitting and want to drink, you can do so. But for now, I want to introduce 3 incredible leaders. Virginia House of Delegates member Briana Sewell. The music is so good. Montgomery City Council member Marche Johnson. And one of my favorite Amandas in politics, Amanda Farías, New York City Council member. No rapping required, unless you want to, your call. Amanda, we will start with you and then go down the row. Why did you run for office?
This is a really great question. I actually just recently won my second attempt at running for office. I was really not interested as being the front runner, the person in the front of it all. I was very happy looking at how I was creating long-term change for my community for generations to come, because I was working in the city council already, and I was working for a member. And at that point, she had asked me a couple different times to run, and I was like, ma'am, no, thank you. Not interested in that. And then she kind of ganged up on me a little bit and got other women that I was working with in the council that were elected and banded us all in a room and was like, this is an open seat. You're born and raised in this community. No one's running. So who better than you? And upon a lot of reflection and asking my best friend and family, I did ask my family. I didn't do what you did. And a lot of my colleagues, because they were the support system, they were the ones that were like, finally, you're making this decision. And really just looking at the community and seeing at that point, 26 years of my life, I lived there. And nothing was any different than the decade before that or the decade before, or when my mom was growing up. And so who better than myself?
My story is very long-winded, but I'm going to cut it very short. I left Montgomery, Alabama to join the military right after high school. I joined the Army, came home every break I got a chance. And time after time, I saw my area diminishing. I saw it becoming a ghost town. 2016, I was honorably discharged from the Army after a deployment to Afghanistan. And I decided that I was gonna come home. Long story short, my grandmother ended up with stage 4 cancer and she wanted to go home because she was with me as a single mom in the military, traveling. And I said, okay, we're gonna go home. So we came back to Montgomery, and the area that I grew up in, this area used to be the side of town. It was North and Central, which is downtown Montgomery. All of the factories were there. You had the first generation homeowners in these areas, very well established. And I saw this area it just almost just doesn't exist. And I felt some kind of way because this area raised me. I was a young girl that lost her mom at 14. So the women around my street and my schools, they helped raise me. And I felt a service to give back. And I just didn't know how, because I didn't come up in a home with everyone talked about politics all the time. That just wasn't it. Everybody was working. Swing shift. My mom was working 3 jobs with 3 kids. She was a single mom. So I had to figure out what to do. And I was running with the first time. Right now we have our first Black mayor in Montgomery. Very good, very excited. But I was running during that time. So I had to figure out how to make a name for myself. How do I get out there with all of this wealth of these family legacies that were running? I was just an average person, basically. What do? I got with all of the organizers and everybody that was on the ground, because I realized I was representing the person that everybody else wanted to represent, but I was that person. I was the average person, the average constituent, that I went to vote when it was time to vote, but I didn't really ask all the big questions. So I started educating people. I got in Emerge, Alabama, which is something Kamala Harris went through. She went through Emerge. Through Emerge, I learned about Emily's List, which eventually ran me to run for something. And I said, what do? I just got all this training and learned all these resources. Somebody said, Marche, run. And I said, for what? And they said, what do you want to run for, a house? I said, no. I want to represent the people. I want to be down at the ground level. And so happened that that city council seat was coming up. And so I ran. And here we are today after 2 tries, but we'll get to that.
So much like the other distinguished women serving on this panel, I chose to run in my hometown. That decision was actually made a little bit for me in many ways. The sitting state delegate in my seat was running for statewide office, and her name was Hala Ayala, and she had the potential to be the first woman lieutenant governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this was such a pivotal moment. And Hala had been such a friend, so that when she called me to tell me really early on that she was planning to run for statewide office, I could not have been more excited for her and excited for someone to tell the story of our community, as I feel that it's a microcosm for the rest of the state. And she ended the conversation after I hyped her up and got her all energized and offered to make phone calls and knock doors for her. And she turned around and said, and I need you to run for my seat. And if you don't, then I'm not going to run for statewide office. So I was like, excuse me, ma'am. The answer is no. And in fact, I think I told her, hell no. But that's wonderful, and I wish you all the best. I too, at that moment in time, and still do, work in local government. And this was at the very beginning of the pandemic. The first statewide case of COVID-19 in the Commonwealth of Virginia was in my backyard. And here I am sitting in an office with my boss, and her other colleagues on the board were trying to eliminate our bus service. They were trying to eliminate access to grocery stores and just shutting down all of the essentials that we all know that are needed so that so many in our community, one, can survive, but also kept so many of us afloat during those times of great uncertainty. And after a sleepless night of trying to find ways simply just to get individuals to hospitals to figure out if they even had COVID, let alone get any sort of resources in that moment in time, I was driving past one of our bus stops, which is simply a sign that says bus stop. We don't have bus shelters in my community. And I was pouring rain. This gentleman's in a suit with his briefcase trying his best to stay dry, and it is 5:30 in the morning. And after sitting through that sleepless night of a meeting where I am listening to individuals talk about shutting down that same bus service that this gentleman is using to get to work so that we can all go and do what we need to do each day and to try to stay healthy, I got a little angry. And I said, damn it, I'm running for office, called Hala and said I'm in. And here we are. We never turn back. And every day I fight for my community.
Marche and Amanda, you both hinted at this, that you have ran once, you lost, you ran again, you won. I want to hear about that decision to run again and what made the second time different. Marche, you want to start?
So my first time I lost by 6 votes, y'all. 6 votes. I even went as far as I did a recount because I said something's wrong. And I still lost by 6 votes. Well, ladies, I was pregnant when I ran. So I just had my baby. And I was like, what am I gonna do now? Am I gonna help? What's going on? I reached out to the councilman that had won, which made me also run. He was a 16-year incumbent. And I reached out to him, asked him what I could do. Long story short, I couldn't reach him. So we started this whole thing about getting a petition to get him out the seat, to put me in the seat. And little did we know he was very sick. He ended up passing away in January. And it came up for special election. And everybody was like, Marche, you better run. And I said, listen, I'm about to run. I ran and I won. I did run against his widow. It was a very interesting race. I think she's the strongest woman in the world to do that, to want to just represent her husband. But running again for the second time, they say for us women and for people, but mostly women and women of color, we have to run twice. Statistically, I think it's true. I've ran twice and I won that second time, but the second time around was much easier because everyone knew who I was and everybody was like, I cannot believe you were right here in front of us and running, doing that hard work, pregnant. And I just beat all the odds because normally they don't even want us to run as women. Then nevertheless, me as a Black woman running, under 40 running, and a single mother running, I just was checking all the blocks that they do not like no, no, and no. But the passion that I have for my community, the people that I grew up with, that I now represent, it couldn't have been anyone else. Because I may sit in this seat, but I hold it for them.
So for me, the first time I ran, I actually was, new to politics. My family, God bless them, but they're not into politics either. It was really me forcing everyone to come out and vote. And out of the woodworks, I came in second, but about 22% of the vote against a 14-year incumbent. So that automatically, I already knew, September 12th was election day. The 13th, I woke up and I was like, all right, I'm doing this again. There's absolutely no way, as the only woman in that race, the youngest candidate coming in second, that I wasn't going to do it again. But we have 4-year terms. So I knew I'd have to do a lot of work in between and make sure I stood visible. But really the decision point was I was helping out a woman running for higher office, volunteering in her campaign, and my predecessor was just in the news for saying the homosexuals run New York City. That is an exact quote. And that is who he is. And so for me, having someone that is anti-LGBTQ+, having someone that is anti-woman, knowing that that is not reflective of my community or my city, I knew that I had to be really scrappy in 3 hours and come up with an announcement and call the news and let them know that I was primarying him. So I made that decision in that night, realizing that I knew that I was the person to represent the community, you know, just 3 months before that, 4 months before that. But it made it even more firm with my feet to the ground, saying that I had to go back at it again. And so that was really my decision point, making sure that people in the community and in my city knew that their investment and their belief in me wasn't in vain and that I was coming back for the seat.
All three of you, as running, have had to deal with some egregiously racist and sexist bullshit thrown at you. How do you find the joy in campaigning in spite of that? Briana?
That is an excellent question. I represent a large portion of Prince William County, which is the 10th most diverse county in the nation. And we are now just starting to tell that story. But the fun fact is the 51st district does not reflect that same level of diversity. I am a minority in my district. And my district spans from deep suburbia to deep rural area. And I knocked all the doors. In those moments where I have had conversations that left me feeling unsafe, I've had times when I even felt unsafe returning home, and I refused to give in because I would always reflect upon the conversations that I would have with that child that inspired them to be their true authentic self, to see what was possible, or to even remember the reason why I ran in the first place and why I chose to come home and serve my community, because I refused to let someone else tell our story. And that's the motivating factor every day. I never forget why I chose to run in that single day when I saw that gentleman at that bus stop. And those are the things that you hold on and remind you of why you're in this race, because if you change one person's life each day, you've done your job.
I think through everything I've told you all about, my story, the block checking, even my first time around, what kept me going was I had, and you all are fine, and if you're in politics, you know, behind every campaign is a group of women that are pushing candidates. And I had those women speaking life in me. I mean, because granted, I told y'all, my parents passed away, you know, just that family dynamic wasn't there. So I'm already feeling a certain kind of way running anyway, and thinking about, hey, when I win, what will that look like? But to have these women that really believed in me, that just met me. These weren't people that I grew up with. These were people that just met me and saw the change that I could make and believed in me. So I had no choice but to believe in myself every day. And sometimes, still to this moment, I do a ride along where that first campaign I did that and it went viral because people hadn't even seen the side of town that I lived on. Nevertheless, me trying to represent it. But now sometimes I'll just get in my car if I feel defeated from a day, or I come from a council meeting that just blew my socks off. I'm like, man, whew, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I ride my neighborhood. I ride my community. The same ride I did when I ran, I just ride that route. And I think something has changed here. I feel it in the atmosphere. I see the roads are getting paved. I see the things that I'm doing taking place that hasn't in 30 years. I'm hearing people tell me stories of this hasn't happened since back when. And to know that I'm listening to them and I'm answering that call, it makes a difference in my life to know that I'm making a difference in theirs every day. So I get up every day and tie my shoes and do what I need to do and go to work for them.
I have to be honest, there's a lot of things that I find joy in this work, including the exhaustion. But I think for me, over the time going through it, seeing all of the young women going into my schools and having young women ready for me to walk into their classroom, saying that they followed the campaign or saw me on Instagram. They ain't seen me on TikTok because I don't do TikTok, but saw me on Instagram. Or the folks in the community that are like, you're the first person that's knocked my door, really building the fight against apathy in our neighborhoods, because government doesn't work for people that look like me, that look like us. Really is what brings me joy, knowing that people see me and they feel like I am talking to them and speaking to the needs of the community. I also have a 12-year-old brother who is gonna surpass me for sure and maybe come for my seat, but he is brilliant and smart and asks so many questions and is like super hyper political. When I first ran, he was 7 and he would wake up 3 hours before school to stand at the train with me to hand out lit. Really being able to use him as a soundboard and to hear his ideas. I was for Bernie and he was for Hillary, and his reasoning was, don't the young women in my class deserve to see someone like them? Exactly, right? He's coming for me, I'm telling you. But he, really, like my 12-year-old brother, the young women in my community, the elders of our village, as was said before, really looking at me and saying, you are the one that's bringing the change or the need. That is what brings me joy every single day. And then like a little bit avenging myself and coming back for that W and actually winning this race, even when they put in multiple candidates against me, even when they put a lot of money up against me, really that the grassroots movement, the feet on the ground, the door knocks, the calls, the money raised, the endorsements, really are what came through for this community, showing up at the polls and putting confidence in them. And so that also brings me joy.
I love the idea of the Farías dynasty. We had someone write in a question. What would you tell yourself if you could go back to the day you decided to run? Dealer's choice on who starts.
I'll start. I will say that I worked almost 5 years in City Hall before running for the first time. And the one thing that I tell people now, I tell young people interested in running for office is hold every business card and get every coffee. I was not moving through politics in a way that I was ever attempting to run in the future. I never saw that for myself. It wasn't an idea. But then it was a lot of catching up and following up I had to do, and I made that decision. So if you can, make sure to keep building your network, even if you feel like, you're not moving into a space to run, you're still going to need people. They might need you. Really just build out your network. And that's probably one piece of advice I would give myself.
I would say to enjoy the ride. I think that when I first decided to run for office, I told you guys I was operating from like a position of just frustration and anger. So therefore I was all in. And then I had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm actually in this now. So we got to finish this out. And there's so many times where I think that I ran a very non-traditional campaign and just focused on having conversations. And I was so focused on just making sure that everyone around me felt heard, that I also needed to make sure that I was enjoying the ride and making sure that they recognize that I'm here and showing up for them, not because I need them, but because I want to be. And that's how you build community, and that's how you build relationship. And I really just reflect upon, there's like so many moments that I wish that I could just like hold on to even greater in detail.
I think that I would tell myself that you got this. I think a lot of times we suffer with imposter syndrome, and we suffer with the things that we just think it should look like this because that's what it looks like. That's how it's portrayed. You should have X amount of dollars. You should come from this type of family. You should have this last name. But I would tell myself, don't worry about all that, because although we have giants, I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. Giants came from Montgomery, Alabama. And they were birthed from Montgomery, Alabama. I was birthed in Montgomery, Alabama. So, so I would tell myself, you're a giant and you stand on giant's back. Even though they might not have been in the front, they were in the kitchen. They were probably cleaning quarters. They were doing something to help with the movement, even if they were waiting for it to come because they were disabled or handicapped. The everyday person is a giant, and working and standing for everyday people, it is bigger than anything, and building your last name is important, and growing your own legacy.
Folks have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sure. So for those who are not aware, prior to last November in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we had a Democratic trifecta. And with that, we saw some of the most progressive legislation ever in the Commonwealth of Virginia that actually inspired many other states, quite frankly. And boy, did many of us never think that day would come. We were able to pass make some incremental changes with regards to voting rights. Now there's 45 days of early voting in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And you don't have to have a reason for voting early or in person. We were able to roll back and get off the books so many terrible policies with regards to criminal justice, and to pass life-changing and criminal justice reform. We have made significant investments in education. It got to a point during the campaign where the rallying cry became Dems did that, right? Like so many of Republicans who are running for office would try to use this as all negatives. And we're all like, no, we improved your life. You're welcome. And with that, we sadly saw the switch. We know how quickly that can change based upon the November election. And we now have a Republican governor. We have a Republican House of Delegates that has a very slim majority, and the same in the Senate, but it's a Democratic majority. So we refer to our state Senate as the brick wall, and the House of Representatives, we just put up a fight. I would say that it has been a lesson in learning how to find unlikely allies when passing or trying to pass progressive legislation in the House of Delegates, but it's also been a lesson in making sure that we tell our story better than they tell theirs. And I think that it's allowed for us as Democrats to really refine our message, but more importantly, to tell the story of ways that your life has been improved, but more importantly, the generations to come. And recognizing that we are not just simply impacting your life each day, we're impacting your child's and telling that story along the way. So that it's definitely been entertaining, to say the least. And I got some great stories about that I'll share a little later.
You'll share that with wine. I got it. We got it.
Yes, maybe tears.
I have to say, New York City, I'm pretty lucky, and I'm just 2 months on the job. So we do have a majority women council. 31 out of 51 seats are women, and they are, thank you, yes. Cheer for us. And most of them are women of color as well. So, you know, thankfully that means legislatively and budgetarily, we're gonna move in a really great direction. You know, in terms of our minority caucus of Republican members, people pretty much work fairly well together. I mean, again, it's been 8 weeks. So we will see how the things go, with the vaccine mandates being rolled out, the mask mandates being, taken back, seeing how that stuff will continue to impact our city. But New York City is very blue and we make New York State blue. But New York State is a little purple. Sometimes people forget. And so we do have to work with our state legislators and in both the Assembly and the Senate to make sure that we can keep the seats that we have and keep the majority that we have. And I will hope to do a lot of work around that for this, at least this election cycle.
I love both of their stories, and I hope that is Alabama's very soon. But in the state of Alabama, the Democrats are a super minority in both the House and the Senate. And as far as for the council, this is the first time that 2 African-American women have served at the same time. We just got our first Black mayor in the most populated and most Democratic city in the state. So we have a long ways to go. And we as the Democratic Party have a lot of building to do in the state of Alabama. They're really broken right now and it's gonna take a funnel. I like the cooperative that Rhode Island has and I'm taking that home with me. So we have a lot of work to do. We just had this past week, a permitless carry bill for guns pass, flying colors. And right now in Montgomery, we have a population of about 205,000, a little over. We've had 70 murders, over 300 cases with shooting involved. And we just passed a permitless carry in our entire state. And so where that puts us as a city with the interim police chief, with the first Black mayor, that makes it look really bad, right? But it's just the circumstance that fell upon his hands. It wasn't something that he created. These bills, we fought them. We got the community to come out and talk, but as a super minority, I can feel the Montgomery delegation feels powerless. And so we just have a lot of building to do. So again, I just hope to have your story in about 5 years. We get a funnel and we'll be talking the same talk.
We got to build the Run for Something bench out there.
I love that we work in Alabama. Other questions? We have a few more minutes. Nothing? Yeah.
What does campaigning mean to you? And how do you take that as a term? Like the idea of broadly running for office, what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? What does that feel?
For me, that's activating a demographic of people that don't normally get out to vote. For me, that's talking to that felon that doesn't know he's capable of voting, that hasn't went to get his rights back. Talking to, I always say the everyday people, but the person underserved beyond the middle class person, is talking to them, seeing what that homeless person thinks about the area that they sleep in, why they can't get shelter, why our bus routes don't have covers. Talking about the real issues, food insecurity. And I think I touched on that I'm in a Republican state. The Republicans run the city of Montgomery, although we are Democratic. And the thoughts of that is talking to them in a nonpartisan way because all of our issues are the same. Most of my area that is very poor are still Republicans and they face the same issues that we face. And so I think getting an understanding, and I'm able to talk across the board and talk to everyone because we're fighting the same fight. Now, they might have another shoe on in the game because they can make a better decision and get a yes vote immediately. And I got to do a little, I guess, lobbying to let them hear my issue and talk to them across the board. But the more people I have behind me, that's campaigning. That issue that I have that's on the ground, and people just grassroots, talking to people and knocking on doors and making the calls and doing the texts and all of the things That's campaigning to me.
For me, it's about, similarly, so yes to everything you said. It's really meeting people where they're at. I mentioned earlier, like fighting apathy. Folks in my community are working 2-3 jobs. Folks in my community are commuting 2.5, 3 hours outside for work. They need the after school program for their kids. We are a food desert, so we're food insecure. We are a transit desert. And all of those are non-sexy issues, but they're real issues that have to be spoken about, and people have to see not only that you can also complain about the things happening to us every day, but you can actually find the solutions to solve those problems. And so for me, it's like meeting folks where they were at in terms of, I'm a tenant too, I'm a Teamster, I'm a union member, I rent like you do. Thank you for the union shout out. I drive a car, even though I know that it's the only way to get through this community, to bring my grandparents to their appointments or my little brother to school. All of these issues, like I can't find a inexpensive vegetable or food options, things like that. All of those issues are very real every day for people, and they don't need to be reminded of it. They need to know that you can actually solve it, or you're going to fight to find the ways to solve those issues. So, being able to put yourself out there is one thing. To campaign, like physically, you're out there every day, you're on. I'm always in a dress. I always got wing liners on and my eyebrows on. Like I always, like the women know. But like you're always on, and that's like campaign mode. That's the politician that everyone assumes you're going to be. But when you knock a door and you say, yeah, my rent is too damn high too. And my mom is getting priced out of our neighborhood, and my little brother doesn't have an after school program either. Like I'm the only one with a flexible schedule that can pick him up every day. Like that's the real shit that people want to hear, and people need to know that you're going to solve. So campaigning is about meeting folks where they're at, fighting the apathy, and even also fighting the fear mongering that the hacky, already politicians that are out there are doing every single day to keep people from wanting more in their community. So, yeah.
And just to add to that, I will simply say that I completely agree. I view campaigning as picking up the megaphone and grabbing the spotlight. So we're telling the story the way that we want it to be told, because that's our community. And these are the stories of my neighbors that we've all lived with for far too long, and no one's done anything about it. JB, earlier you mentioned that there's a 13-year gap in the health outcomes of your neighbors. When you travel my district, there's a 17-year difference in life expectancy. And again, Prince William County, one of the most diverse counties in the nation, but we're also on paper one of the wealthiest. That's a problem. We've known this, but no one's done anything about it. So now let's tell that story in a way that that guy who lives in that rural town in my district feels the same way that my next door neighbor does here in suburbia, because we are all in this together, and your stories are the exact same, but now let's find a way to fix it.
Okay. We're going to let you be our last question.
Yeah, thank you all. So I'm running for the Maryland House of Delegates. And approaching the end of my personal network list and getting diminishing returns. All the time about to start, sort of the curated random list. What is your, motivation and best advice for keep going, and your best practices, please?
If I were you, I would actually reach out to those who are most invested in your campaign. Something I did when it became really hard to raise money is those who are in my community, I would do meetups. So in their neighborhood, and use that as a way just to meet more people. Because while you're in the process of looking for money, which is not why you're there in that moment, you're telling your story, and therefore you're expanding your network. And I'm cracking up at your mask because only the state of Maryland loves their flag that much.
Can I ask you something? Have you gone through your Facebook and like DM'd every single person? Okay, so wait, so let me tell you something. One night our deadlines get shorter and shorter and shorter in New York City to like when you have to actually publicly post how much you've raised. I had a small deadline, a small fundraising goal of $5,000. And my campaign manager at the time was like, you just got to do it. Like, we need it. And I'm like, girl, there's no money. Like, I don't know where to find more money, right? Like, I've harassed everyone that I could actually ask for money. And 12 hours before the deadline, I'm at like $1,200. I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to find it somewhere else, I guess, another time, right? And showing that you're raising shows viability, credibility, blah, 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 right? All that stuff, that's not real. But for the show, you got to do it. And I just started just DMing or sliding into everybody's DM. I was like, hey, can you donate $10? I haven't spoken to you in 3 years, but I'm running for office. Can you do $25? And people, by the morning, I had raised $8,200 and something dollars. People, I was asking for 10, they were giving me 100. Like, they were like, we've been watching, we see you, we see the work, the fight that you're doing for the community. So like, try to exhaust every angle that you might think seems silly, or like you're not even thinking about Facebook and like hitting people up on Messenger. Like, that definitely works. And then I would say tap into like your biggest fans. Like, there are people that 100% believe in you that will keep helping you raise money, and do different ways to say like, hey, you've given 10, can you ask 3 people to match and give 10 too? Like, there's multiple ways that you can ask. The cold calling is gonna suck, but it's part of it. Don't believe anything you hear from elected officials that say they don't do call time. It's important, but there's different angles, and there's always going to be cheerleaders on your team that want to help you raise more money. I used to set up a bunch of host committees and would have like 10 people commit to $100 each. That's $1,000, right? Write or raise. I don't know if other states do write or raises, but in New York we do. So just find those people that maybe didn't meet their write or raise, or can do another small virtual house party for you, to keep expanding that network. And in every small fundraiser or every Facebook Messenger DM, there'll be someone that's super excited that like, then you can follow up and say, could you commit to helping me raise another 500 or another 250?
Yes to both of these things. Both, everything they said, yes. I actually did what she's talking about with Facebook. I went out and I added 5,000 people, the max. I didn't know half of those people. Right now, I don't know any of them. I added them and I started hitting them up. Like, hey, do you remember, like, girl, I would ask my cousin, like, do you know who that is? She'd be like, yeah, they graduated high school 2 years before us. Did they know you? She said, yes. I say, do you remember such and such? They be like, yes, that's my cousin. I'm running for office.
That's a really good point. I legit met family on the campaign trail. Yeah. Like, I was like, long lost cousin, thank you for this donation. You're amazing.
Yeah. Okay, let's close this out with, in one tweet or less, what can people do to help you? Let's start with Briana.
So I'm currently in session, so I'm not allowed to solicit funds, but I would simply say that follow what's happening in Virginia, speak up, help provide that megaphone for us so that we can tell our story, and also shine those lights on what's good, but also more importantly, shine on what's going wrong. We need that help to amplify.
For me, election is until 2023. I'm always running, but for me, what help I need is, again, telling a story and asking questions. What happened in Montgomery? A lot of the stories that you all know very well, you think it happened in Birmingham. It happened in Montgomery. So putting the story out, getting the name Montgomery, Alabama, putting us on the map so people know that we exist. They know that we're here, we're fighting, and we're trying to get our content out. So really just growing the visitors, the tourism from the city of Montgomery coming to learn our story. So if you're out, come visit. You can, Marche on the Move is my website, MARCHE on the Move. You can sign up for my newsletter if you want to keep up with what's happening. And through that sign up, I'll email you when it's time.
She just stole my line. So I do have to run again in 2023 because of redistricting. Our terms are cut short in New York City, so I'll be running in 2 years. So I'm not fundraising right now, but I will be really soon. And so for me, it's just amplifying, you know, my story, who I am, following me, giving me insight, words of encouragement through my DMs. That'd be great. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Amanda Farías, NYC.
A round of applause for our 3 panelists. You guys are amazing. Oh. You guys are the best. Before we close out and move to the ballroom, like you have to go past all the hotel rooms and go to the other side, and there's bar and there's more food and more space. You can talk and mingle and be with each other. I just want to say again, thank you. There are a lot of people in this room who've been with Run for Something since before we launched, who were there when I was like, hey, crazy idea. What if we did this thing that might work? Who knows? And then thank you to the Run for Something team, to the staff, both who are there virtually and who are here in person, who made this event happen, especially Marche. I will say the thing that I've missed most about doing events in person, besides like community and chatting and drinking and all that is great, is that every Run for Something event we have done over the last 5 years, I have left feeling good about politics, which is like, you're nodding. It's such a weird feeling, but it is how we've been able to do this for 5 years. It is how our team has worked around the clock. It's how we have done so much on what is admittedly so little. We would like it to be much, much more. runforsomething.net/donate. It is how we've been able to do this, because getting to work with people like the 6 amazing leaders you met today and the hundreds and thousands more like them across the country makes me think that politics can be good and government can be good. If we focus on the right places and the right people at the right time early, there is good things that can come from this, which doesn't always feel that way when you scroll Twitter or read the news. So thank you for letting us have what I think is the best job in politics. Thank you for making this possible. And we are so lucky and so glad to be doing this with all of you. Thank you.